Hey family! Tonight, we're diving into one of ancient Rome's most unexpected, absolutely wild professions, the orgy planner. Yeah, you heard me. Somebody had to be in charge of scheduling the wine, supervising the grapes, coordinating entertainment, and, most importantly, making sure nobody brought their mother-in-law to a party with that much nudity and incense. Sounds ridiculous, right? Maybe even straight up decadent. But Roman feasting culture wasn't just about overindulgence. It was about power, status, strategy, politics, and yes, a whole lot of exposed skin. So before we get into the madness, take a second to like the video, but only if you're truly vibing with what we do here. And drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is right now. I love seeing this community come alive from every corner of the world. Now go ahead and dim those lights. Maybe turn on a little fan for that soft hum in the background. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your eyes snap open before the sun has even thought about rising. Not because you're disciplined. No, that would be too noble a reason. You're up because you're already stressed out. You, Marcellus Tate, are tonight's orgy planner for one of the most elite gatherings in the Black Noble District of Imperial Rome. And your anxiety has clocked in early, as always. The mat beneath you is still warm. Your linen tunic is rumpled from tossing all night, and your feet barely touch the ground before a scroll slips under your door. You already know who it's from. The rustle of papyrus sounds like a threat. You unroll it like a condemned man reading his sentence. Sure enough, it's Lady Verona Langston, wife of your patron and nightmare in a jeweled head wrap. She's reminding you that at the last gathering the rose petals were yellow, not red, and that, guests noticed, you haven't even touched your barley yet, and already you're being judged by the color of flower confetti. Outside, the city is still stretching its arms, but inside your head, the circus has begun. You're not planning a party. You're staging a social experiment where the slightest mistake, wrong wine, wrong flute note, wrong guest next to the wrong mistress, could start a scandal so nuclear the Senate would need to vote on damage control. Tonight's guest list reads like a scroll of sins waiting to happen. 2 arrogant senators, a pair of high-profile courtesans who absolutely loathe each other, a philosopher who once got booed off a stage mid-poem, and, because life's not done mocking you, someone from the imperial family, no one says who. Could be a distant cousin, could be Caligula himself. Either way, if the peacocks aren't sufficiently fanned, it's your career on the line. You slide into your sandals and start the day the same way you always do, with dread in your chest and a clipboard in your hand. First up, staffing. You sent out runners yesterday. 4 flute girls, 3 dancers, 1 harpist, and that upside-down acrobat who balances fig trays with his feet. None have confirmed. You suspect at least 2 are drunk in the Subura, and 1's probably in love again. Then there's the food. You've requested oysters from Baiae, honey-roasted dormice, dates, figs, olives, and meats from far-off lands no one can pronounce. Everything must be fresh, or at least fake fresh. 1 bad oyster and everyone's whispering that you poisoned Senator Gaspar. Again. And the cushions. Jupiter the cushions. Last time, 1 collapsed under a magistrate and started a feud that lasted 6 months. This time they need to be sturdy enough to survive weight, wine, and whatever other acts the night inspires. You know exactly what those couches endure. The sun is barely above the rooftops and you're already sweating into your linen. You take a breath. You are a professional. You are a maestro of chaos, a choreographer of decadence, a black man balancing egos, lust, and political games with the grace of a temple dancer. It's going to be a long day. But the rose petals will be the right color. The wine will flow. The scandal will be well dressed. And if someone gets stabbed over seating arrangements, well, you've survived worse. Not that anyone will thank you, because if you do your job right, they'll never know how close they came to disaster. Your eyes open before sunrise, not because you're trying to be productive, but because your mind's already hosting its own disaster simulation. You've counted 17 ways this night could go wrong, and that's just before breakfast. You sit up slowly, feeling the weight of the day ahead settle on your shoulders like a silk-draped anvil. Your sleeping mat still holds your body's heat. Your tunic's wrinkled, and someone has already shoved another scroll under your door. It crackles like it holds a death threat wrapped in pleasantries. You unroll it with the resigned hands of a gladiator about to enter the arena. It's her again, Lady Verona. This time she's reminding you that last year one of the pillows was too firm, and the harp solos ran long. You haven't even touched your barley yet, and you're already fielding complaints about cushion texture and musical pacing. Outside, the streets of Rome stretch and yawn, their first carts and cries just beginning to echo. But inside your head, you're already mentally juggling flaming amphorae. Your breath is shallow, your palms are damp. It's game time. Today's guest list looks like a nightmare wearing silk. You've got 2 senators known for backhanded compliments and front-handed slaps, trio of philosophers who hate each other's metaphors, 2 courtesans who once tried to stab each other with olive forks and whispered like a curse, someone connected to the imperial family. No one tells you who. Could be a cousin. Could be Caligula himself. Either way, if someone's peacock isn't sufficiently fluffed or the incense offends someone's ancestors, it's your name that'll be dragged through the Senate like yesterday's bread. You step into your sandals with the same energy a soldier straps on armor. Because tonight, you're not just throwing a party. You're navigating a minefield made of egos, gossip, and silk-covered couches. You glance at your clipboard, the one with 25 tasks, 8 revisions, and a dried wine stain from last week's disaster. Deep breath. Let's begin. First order of business, staffing. You sent your messengers out yesterday with strict orders. Book the performers early. You requested 4 flute girls, 3 dancers, a harpist, and that maniac who walks on his hands while balancing a tray of figs with his feet. None have confirmed. You already know why. At least 2 are sleeping off a wine haze in Subura. 1 is probably mid-romantic meltdown. And the last one? Probably tangled in someone's bedchamber drama from last night. Then there's the food. You ordered everything on time. Oysters from Baiae, honey-roasted dormice, fig-stuffed birds, and meats from every province this side of the Nile. You, even demanded that the oysters be still alive, or at least acting like they were alive. Last time, a senator bit into a dead one and declared it an omen of doom. He hasn't smiled since. And the couches. Sweet Jupiter. Last year, one of the wine deans collapsed through a too-soft cushion and started a lawsuit. This time, everything needs to be sturdy enough to handle men with big egos and bigger waistlines. The sun hasn't even hit the rooftops, and you're already sweating into your linen. You take a moment. Close your eyes. You remind yourself who you are. You are Marcellus Tate, planner of chaos, conductor of scandal, guardian of dignity in a room where people are guaranteed to lose theirs. You adjust your tunic, lift your scroll, and prepare yourself. Tonight the city will pretend it's full of gods and empresses, and none of them will realize you're the one who made it all work, or almost fall apart. You unroll a fresh scroll and stare at it like it just confessed a crime. It's the updated guest list, or more accurately, a finely balanced political. Grenade wrapped in parchment and perfume. This isn't a seating chart. It's a live diplomatic simulation, one where one wrong pairing could result in an olive bowl to the face or an accusation of public dishonor. Top of the list, Lucius Calpurnius Piso. Of course, he comes to everything. He insists on reclining. In the center couch, usually right next to someone else's wife. It's part of his brand. But here's the problem. His wife, Aurelia, is also coming. She wasn't invited. She's never invited. That hasn't stopped her before. You scribble down your first tactical notes. Separate couches, separate wine servers, and absolutely no harp solos when they're both in the room. Last time, the music swelled during a toast, and Aurelia hurled a jug of garum across the floor like she was auditioning for a gladiator pit. Next name, Senator Petronius Arbiter. Brilliant man, sharp tongue, known more for cutting insults than cutting policies. A dangerous guest, and worse, he's witty, the kind of man who can ruin a person's legacy with one clever toast. You scan further and groan. Junius Blaccus is attending too, a poet whose last performance Petronius once described as a slow death written in meter. You highlight both names and draw thick red arrows away from each other. And then it gets worse. Decianus, a well-connected merchant of questionable morals, is bringing 2 guests. That's all it says. No names, no descriptions, just +2. You stare at the vague scribble like it insulted your intelligence. They could be respected clients. They could be disgraced gladiators. Hell, they could be a giraffe in a toga, and no one would question it if Decianus was footing the bill. You. Write in bold, irritated script, flexible seating, West End, near a fan, away from wine. Then there's the entertainment list. You've booked 4 flute girls, 3 dancers, a pair of mime twins. Already, you know that's one more act than Lucullus prefers. Lucullus, noble, conservative, and easily offended, considers mimes barbaric, but his mistress? She finds them delightful, and Lucullus finds her approval more important than his public morals. You mutter under your breath and make a note, keep mimes out of sight until 3rd course. And don't let them mime anything edible. You take a step back and look at the scroll. It's not just names, it's a battlefield. A mosaic of ambition, lust, betrayal, and family feuds, all expected to recline on silk cushions and sip from the same communal bowl without flipping a table and hovering over it all. The real terror, someone important who wasn't invited. You can already hear the whispers. It was deliberate. A public insult. He never wanted me there. I'll never lend him my bath slaves again. You exhale slowly and begin a new scroll. This one isn't for names, it's for warnings. You draw arrows, you circle names, you scribble in red, underline in black. Every symbol, every note, a coded system of survival. Because you're not planning a party. You're managing a nuclear summit disguised as an evening of luxury and lubricated diplomacy. And if you fail, it won't be just your name that gets slandered. It'll be your legacy, your patron, and your entire household. Still, you've done this before, and God's willing, you'll survive it again. Just, please, no stabbing over couch placement, not like last spring. With the guest list now stabilized, or at least less likely to start an actual fistfight, it's time to face the next beast, the feast itself, planning a Roman-style luxury. Banquet isn't just about pouring wine and lighting torches. No, it's a performance. A curated, calculated, opulence-loaded production designed to make the gods feel underdressed. You glance at your food inventory scroll. It's already 3 tablets long and still growing like a hydra. First up, the wine. Not just any wine. It has to be Fernian, aged in amphorae and expensive enough to make your patron wince at the invoice. You scribble, 3 amphorae Fernian. Strong, 2 Cuban, showpiece only, 1 vinegar, latecomers and punishments. The vinegar's not just symbolic. Last time someone showed up an hour late with a smug grin, you served them a goblet of it and smiled as they gagged through the opening speech. Next on the list, oysters. Imported live from Baiae, not merely fresh, alive. You make a note to send a slave with a whisper in the vendor's ear. Last time, half the oysters were already dead. One guest fainted. The other called it a curse. He's still seeing an augur about it. Then, of course, the honey-roasted dormice, the staple of Roman excess. They must be rolled in poppy seeds, plump, glistening, and seductively roasted. You've asked for 50, you'll get 35. Half will twitch. Moving on. Roasted peacock, feathers reapplied for dramatic flair, not flavor. It doesn't matter if it tastes like old sandals. It needs to look like a queen's funeral procession in bird form. Also on the menu, stuffed udders. Don't ask. Carthaginian figs, Judean dates cheese wrapped in vine leaves, olives arranged like tiny edible mosaics. Then you scribble a warning in bold, no garum accidents near bread. Last time, a jug of fermented fish sauce exploded near the bread trays. The anchovy-scented rolls sparked a near brawl between 2 magistrates. One accused the other of sabotage. The other just wept. It was not ideal. For dessert, you dream bigger. Candied nuts, almond cakes, and a centerpiece cake shaped like the Colosseum, filled with live songbirds. You're not sure how the logistics will work, but someone will figure it out or get reassigned to sponge duty. Then comes the perfume budget. You jot down myrrh, rose oil, saffron, water, enough incense to make a Vestal Virgin dizzy. You even make a discreet note. Scent the latrines this time, gently. The scroll by now looks like a military supply chain. It would cost more than a villa outside Ostia, but this is Rome. Decadence isn't a luxury, it's the expectation. If a guest isn't halfway hallucinating from overstimulation by the second course, you've failed. Your job isn't to satisfy appetites. Your job is to leave them too overwhelmed to notice the music's off-key or that someone's throwing olives at their ex-lover. You hand the scroll to your fastest runner and give him strict instructions, no substitutions, no improvisations. And if you forget the sugared grapes again, I'm feeding you to the flamingos. Let's clear something up real quick. A vomitorium? Yeah, it's not what you think. No, the Romans didn't build special rooms for guests to force themselves to puke mid-feast and return for another round of peacock and perfumed figs. That idea? A complete myth. Probably invented by someone who saw Romans eat and couldn't imagine they weren't purging between courses. In truth, vomitorium referred to the entry and exit tunnels in Roman amphitheaters. You know, the architectural passages that vomit out crowds after gladiator shows. But modern minds couldn't resist twisting it into something far more grotesque. Still, even if the vomitorium wasn't real, the overindulgence absolutely was, which is why, as tonight's orgy planner, it's your job to prepare for every physical consequence of luxury and ensure the entire venue, from atrium to triclinium to discreet garden alcove, is ready to absorb the fallout in style. You begin your inspection with the banquet hall. The mosaic tiles must shine, especially the one with Bacchus riding a panther, which last week had a grape stem stuck in the grout. You personally remove it, because standards. The latrines? Flawless. They're cleaned, perfumed, and stocked with fresh sponges on sticks. Lemon-scented vinegar refreshed. Small candle flickering in the corner. Not for light, for dignity. Out in the courtyard, the fountains are babbling beautifully, and you triple-check the basins. Guests have a tendency to lean too far over after their fifth goblet of wine and plunge headfirst. Last month, a general's wife nearly drowned in the koi pond. You removed the koi. You couldn't remove the wife. In the perfume chamber, your attendants are lining up alabaster bottles like they're preparing for war. You test one, cinnamon myrrh blend. Your wrist smells like a flirtation with Venus. Perfect. Then you arrive at the myth room. Not really a vomitorium, but close enough. It's a private hallway, curtained off, with a chair, a bronze basin, and a polite enslaved attendant holding a fan. No one calls it the vomitorium, of course. They call it the retreat. But everyone knows exactly what it's for, and it, too, must be flawless. Clean, scented, and quietly dignified, because here's your unspoken promise. No matter how unhinged things get tonight, no one leaves this party feeling undignified. If someone does purge, they'll do it surrounded by polished marble, lit incense, and tastefully carved murals of satyrs. That's your standard. Mid-morning creeps in, warm and humming. And with it comes the most delicate part of your job. Not the wines, not the nobles, not even the guest list roulette. No, it's the staff. A Roman feast of this magnitude requires people, lots of them, most of whom did not wake up today hoping to spend their night pouring wine for sweaty senators while flute girls cry softly. In corners, you gather your army in the atrium. 23 bodies, lined up like a backstage cast, each with a role to play in the theater of excess. Most are enslaved workers, some born into the household, others purchased specifically for these kinds of luxury events. A few are paid performers, musicians, dancers, specialists in seductive silence. All of them are stressed. First up, cupbearers. You assign zones, central triclinium, west lounge garden periphery, and then you remind them firmly. Dilute the strong wine unless told otherwise. Fernian isn't a joke. Last time a senator started singing hymns to Mercury mid-course, he thought the amphora was enchanted. Next, fan bearers. Their job sounds simple, but you know better. One gust too strong and you've extinguished a candle, or exposed someone's scandal. One gust too soft and a magistrate sweats through his silk. They nod solemnly. They know what's at stake. Then come the fruit attendants. Yes, fruit attendants. Their entire job? Keep trays full peel grapes only upon request and remove any piece of fruit that begins to wrinkle or look vaguely raisin-like. One girl asks, "Should I remove bruised olives too?" You stare at her for a second, then just nod. Because she gets it over by the pillar, the musicians are already arguing about tempo. You separate the flute girl and the lyre player. Again. Last time their disagreement turned into a duet so uncomfortable that the guests offered marriage counseling between courses. Next, the dancers. They're leaning dramatically against a pillar, drenched in oil and attitude, pretending not to listen. But you give the rundown anyway. No improvisation, no accidents. We are not repeating the Bacchic fire incident. Few of them glance away, guiltily. You pause before the last staffer, the youngest enslaved boy, no older than 10, whose job is to collect discarded sandals and keep the floors clear. You nod once. He nods back. A silent pact is made. He will not fail you. Finally, you give your signature speech. You've given it a dozen times, but each delivery is sacred. Tonight, you are invisible, unless summoned. You are silent, unless spoken. 2. You are grace, rhythm, and elegance in motion. Or I swear by Jupiter's sandals, I will assign you to sponge duty until Saturnalia. A long silence follows, then a collective nod, a deep exhale. Briefings are complete. The human engine behind Roman indulgence has been oiled, powdered, and aligned for now. It happens every single time. You've sent the invitations. You've confirmed the dancers. The peacock's feathers are getting reapplied as we speak, and just when you let yourself believe, just for a moment, that things might go smoothly this time, someone runs into the atrium, out of breath, eyes wide, speaking the sentence you've come to fear more than any curse. The musicians haven't arrived. Of course they haven't. You grit your teeth so hard your jaw clicks. You booked 4 flute girls, 2 cithara players, and an emergency backup allos duo specifically for this exact situation. And yet here you are, staring down the possibility of a silent Roman party, which is considered a civic offense in this district. You don't even ask why they're late. You already know they're either still asleep, too drunk to stand, or tangled in some theatrical love triangle from last night's Saturnalia rehearsal. You send your fastest runner straight to the Subura, Rome's chaotic marketplace of noise. Dice games, cheap wine, and bad decisions. You tell him, find them, alive, dressed, preferably both. The dancers are now complaining that without music they can't rehearse. One is stretching her leg halfway up a statue and glaring dramatically at no one in particular. Meanwhile, the poets, those vultures of silence, are delighted. They assume this means more stage time. One already starts rehearsing a 5-minute ode to his mother's 3rd marriage. You crush that dream immediately. No, absolutely not. No poems while people are eating dormice. You run through your mental backup plan. The cook knows 2 songs on a cracked reed pipe. One of the older slaves has a decent singing voice if kept away from the wine. And worst case scenario, you hum in rhythm while someone shakes a jar of lentils. Please, gods, don't let it come to that. And then, like spirits summoned from incense and regret, the musicians finally arrive, disheveled, half apologetic, smelling faintly of spikenard and scandal. One of the flute girls is missing a sandal. The other looks like she just got her heart broken by at least 3 senators and a philosopher. But they're here. That's all that matters. You assign stations immediately. 1 in the atrium, 1 in the garden, 1 in the dining hall. For mood, not attention, you look each of them in the eye and give your warning. No dramatic tempo shifts, no dirges, and absolutely no impromptu solos unless someone is actively dying. They nod. Sort of. You exhale. Crisis averted. For now. Still, you eye the lyre player suspiciously. He's tuning his instrument slowly, lovingly, way too lovingly. That's the look of a man who's planning to hijack the mood with a spontaneous love ballad no one asked for. You scribble a note. Seat him near the door. Easy removal. Because if music is the soul of the party, then timing is your only hope for salvation. If music is the soul of the party, then seating is the strategy. And in your world, strategy means survival. You're not just placing people on couches. You're navigating rivalries, dodging ancient grudges, disarming forbidden romances, and orchestrating the illusion of peace, all with velvet cushions and olive bowls. You pull out a wax tablet and begin to sketch your battle plan. You mutter to yourself like a general surveying terrain: center couch, triclinium formation, status up front, problems in the back. In Roman dining custom, 3 couches arranged in a U shape make up the triclinium. Each can seat up to 3 people, technically. But 7 is the safer number if you want to avoid elbows in wine goblets and dagger-like glares between lovers. The center couch, summa locusta, is the place of honor. And the problem: 2 guests believe it belongs to them. Senator Piso, who believes in bloodlines and charm, and Governor Crispus, who believes in bribes and beard oil. Both are stubborn, both are loud, and both have wives with opinions. You stare at their names like you're choosing who to mildly poison first. You scribble a note. Give Piso the central couch. Place Crispus near the musicians. If he complains, tell him it's acoustically superior. Now comes the delicate dance of romantic geometry. Some guests must be placed near their lovers, but not too near. Others must be kept as far apart as humanly possible, separated by a full bowl of olives, a third-party buffer, and ideally, a large boring man who won't say anything all evening. You assign one equestrian merchant to sit next to a melodramatic poet. He won't understand the verses. The poet will mistake his silence for awe. Perfect. Then come the courtesans, strategically placed not by rank, but by potential for distraction. You assign 2 to the west side of the triclinium. Not because it matters, but because it will. Bother Aurelia, Piso's wife. And she needs something to complain about. That isn't the wine temperature. You leave 2 cushions empty on purpose. These are your escape hatches. Your diplomatic air pockets. They provide plausible deniability, last-minute flexibility, and a place for the disappointed poet to sulk when no one claps after his love sonnet. You lean back and review your wax sketch like an artist admiring a mosaic. You know, deep in your bones, it's a masterpiece, but it won't last, because someone, always someone, will arrive uninvited or switch seats mid-toast to make a point, or spill wine and demand a full reshuffling. You roll up the scroll and hand it to the placement steward with a single command: place wax name tags. And for the love of Jupiter, don't let anyone switch them. You know they will, but at least you tried. If the orgy is a performance, the kitchen is the backstage arena. And by mid-afternoon it smells like figs, fire, and imminent emotional breakdown. The space is a humid whirlwind of clanging platters, sizzling sauces, shouted orders, and the faint sound of someone trying not to cry over a bowl of honey. At the center of it all, the head cook, Fabius, a former naval chef turned domestic warlord. He's currently red in the face, waving a ladle like a sword, and screaming at an assistant who apparently committed the crime of undersalting the peacock feathers. Honey, poppy seeds, and if you forget the stuffing ratio again, I will personally throw you into the Tiber. You pass by calmly, nodding. That kind of rage means everything's on schedule. Tonight's main attraction: a roasted peacock. Feathers, reapplied of course. It looks magnificent, tastes like sandal leather, but that's not the point. It's not meant to be eaten. It's meant to be bragged about. Meanwhile, a whole pig is roasting in a pit. But not just any pig. It's stuffed with live doves. Yes, live. The moment it's carved open at the table, the doves will fly out, creating a spectacle that's impressive, confusing, and only mildly traumatic for the birds. On the far counter, pastry chefs are glazing a cake shaped like the Colosseum. A young servant tries to sneak a bite and is immediately reassigned to grape peeling duty for the rest of the night. Harsh, but fair. The air is thick with the pungent scent of garum, that infamous Roman fish sauce made from fermented anchovies, and the tears of everyone within sniffing distance. You yell across the steam. Keep the garum away from the bread. Last month's anchovy rolls almost started a duel between two magistrates. Someone nods and moves the jug, which is already leaking onto the fig tray. You sigh. In the corner, servers are arranging amphorae of wine, Fernian for the elite cheaper blends for those who can't tell the difference. And one bottle so terrible it's used strictly for punishment pours. You check the wine labels. Last year, someone mislabeled a jug and a consul drank vinegar meant for a prank. He nearly declared war on his neighbor. You don't take chances anymore. The whole kitchen hums like a symphony on the edge of collapse. Platters, polished sauces, reduced, dormice stuffed. Pastry horns filled with edible mysteries you don't want explained. You glide through the smoke and heat, sniffing, tasting, commanding. Because you're not just feeding guests. You're building an edible empire, one that needs to impress, intoxicate, and possibly survive being thrown during an argument. As you pass the oven, the cook screams, "If anyone drops another dormouse, I'm feeding them to the peacock." You don't stop. You just nod. Everything is going perfectly. You'd think selecting a scent would be easy. It's not. In Rome, perfume is a political weapon. And at an event like this, it's just as important as wine, peacocks, and not seating enemies. Too close to the roast. The air itself must reek of confidence, sensuality, and untaxed imports. It should whisper, "You are desired, you are powerful, you are about to make a poor decision, and look amazing doing it." You descend into the storage chamber, where tiny alabaster jars gleam like sacred relics. This isn't just a collection, it's an arsenal. Your fingers hover over myrrh from Arabia, cinnamon oil from Ceylon, frankincense from Nubia, and an experimental blend called Essence of Nile Lotus, which smells like an expensive pond full of secrets. You start composing your fragrance strategy like a battlefield general. Atrium, citrus, and cedarwood crisp, bright. The olfactory version of a well-dressed warning says, "You belong here, but behave." Main triclinium, dining room. Myrrh, musk, and a flicker of frankincense. Heavy, slow, seductive says, "You might make a mistake tonight, and that's okay." Garden alcoves. Rose and cinnamon, a dash of spikenard, strong enough to make someone dizzy if they stand too close, says, "Come closer, closer. That's too close." Then there are the guest oils, for hands, feet, and the necks of those who know how to flirt without words. You assign a junior attendant to warm the oils. Slightly, because cold oil is for barbarians, warm oil is for seduction, and good lighting. You check the latrines too. Yes, even the bathrooms. You've scented them with lavender and sandalwood, discreetly placed candles glowing like little halos of hygiene. You're not a savage. A dancer approaches, bold and oiled, and requests a signature scent, something hypnotic. You hesitate, then hand her a blend so powerful it once caused a minor riot at a Saturnalia feast. You give her a warning. She just smiles. She's going to use double. You walk the halls like a perfumed ghost, trailing your nose like a trained hound. Every corner of the house now carries intent, scent as choreography. By the time you reach the central dining area again, the atmosphere has transformed. It doesn't smell like a house anymore. It smells like luxury, temptation, and bad decisions wrapped in silk. You pause, you inhale, and you nod. This is what indulgence smells like. Late afternoon has settled in like a velvet robe, draped in heat and heavy with expectation. The air smells of citrus, sweat, roasted meat, and extremely expensive mistakes. You've assigned every servant, threatened every dancer, and bribed the harpist to stay sober, at least until dessert. Now comes the moment of truth, the final walkthrough. You start at the entrance, where oil lamps are being lit one by one. Their flickering glow catches the marble and casts long golden shadows that whisper, "Tonight, you are not poor. Not in this house. Not with this much wine in your future." A flower boy walks ahead, tossing rose petals with exaggerated flourish. You stop him. No lavender. Not after what happened last time. Someone slipped, landed in a split, and sued. Inside, the bronze fountains gurgle gently. Grapes are stacked into absurd pyramids that look more like monuments than snacks. Pillows have been beaten, fluffed, rotated, and arranged in unnatural symmetry. Too perfect. You move one slightly to make it look accidental. Because true decadence must appear effortless, even if it took 32 hours and 2 emotional breakdowns to achieve. In the triclinium, tables are low, couches angled precisely. Each cushion has been dusted, perfumed, and double-checked for structural integrity. You perform the bounce test. Soft enough for comfort, firm enough to survive activity. You inspect the tableware. Silver goblets shine like coins from Olympus bronze platters. Gleam bread is artfully arranged to look like a sculpture of harvest abundance. Cheese is sweating slightly in the heat. But you decide that adds authenticity. You discreetly remove a beetle from a fig. No one sees. It never happened. Out in the garden alcoves, the light is soft and ambiguous. Just dim enough to be flattering. Just bright enough to avoid someone falling into a shrub and claiming divine possession. Incense drifts lazily in the air. You pause. You inhale. It's perfect. You smile, just barely. And for the first time all day, allow yourself the smallest taste of pride. You've done it. You've built a dream out of velvet, spices, and lies. You've tamed chaos. You've preempted scandal. You believe, for one breathless second, that you're in control. And that's when a servant rushes in, face pale. The guest of honor has arrived. Early, and he brought 3 extra wives. Of course he did. You smile the kind of smile that means nothing inside you is okay. You smooth your tunic, straighten your back, and step into the fray. The first guest enters like he owns the empire, arms wide, tunic starched, sandals polished within an inch of their lives. Behind him trail 3 women, all in matching cloaks, none of whom are his wife. This is your guest of honor. He nods at you without recognition, without acknowledgement, as if the cushions fluffed themselves, the incense summoned itself, and the wine grew legs and poured into cups. One of his wives sneezes and demands a different perfume blend. The other 2 begin critiquing the flower arrangements in a language that sounds vaguely threatening. You smile, bow, and guide them inside. Behind them, the dominoes begin to fall. The philosopher arrives. He always brings a scroll he won't be asked to read. He nods at you solemnly and mutters something about time being a flat sponge. You agree, because why not? Then comes Senator Piso, in full glory, cloak trailing behind him, face flushed from pre-party wine, and ego freshly waxed. He scans the room with a look that says, I expect to be seated like a god, and worshipped like one too. You escort him to the center couch, distracting him with compliments and sugared almonds. You pray to every deity you know that Aurelia doesn't show up early. Spoiler, she does. She enters with all the chill of a Pompeian volcano and refuses to remove her sandals. A dancer tries to help. Aurelia swats her away like a fly. You immediately assign her the far couch, flanked by wine, music, and at least 2 buffers she won't recognize. The air thickens. The real event has begun. The poet Junius Blaccus arrives. Next, draped in faux grief and cheap myrrh, he immediately begins reciting an original verse about grapes as metaphors for unfaithful lovers. No one asked. No one stops him. Meanwhile, a man in the back is sharpening a dagger with a piece of bread. You make a mental note. Keep him away from the goose dish. He once mistook a garnish for an insult. More guests stream in, each one louder, drunker, and more entitled than the last. The courtesans arrive in pairs, pretending not to know each other, despite having fought last month over a shared flute player. They kiss on the cheek like sisters. They're not. And then there's Lucullus, who arrives late, huffing and complaining about the overuse of saffron in the air. You compliment his tunic. He calms instantly. Vanity is the strongest sedative. In the background, musicians begin tuning. A flute squeaks. Someone laughs too loudly. Wine is being poured like it's holy. Water. Dancers stretch. Poets sulk. Lovers scan the room to find people they're trying not to be caught looking at. And you? You stand in the shadows. Composed. Watching. Managing the madness with the calm of a man who once hosted a birthday dinner where someone set fire to their own wig and called it performance art. You've seen worse. And this? This is just the beginning. By mid-feast, the room is pulsing. Laughter, flute music, dancing sandals, and the soft hum of barely contained scandal swirl like incense over everything. The triclinium is glowing, literally, thanks to hundreds of tiny oil lamps casting golden flickers across wine-slicked silk and bare shoulders glistening with cinnamon oil. The guests are no longer themselves. They are becoming characters, mythic beings, creatures of ego, luxury, and liquefied logic. One senator has started calling himself Bacchus, waving a fig in the air like a scepter. A merchant has decided he's a descendant of Venus and keeps adjusting his robe to show more thigh. No one asked. In the far corner, someone is flirting with a statue. It's not even a particularly well-carved statue, just a vaguely muscular torso holding a wine jug. But they're whispering secrets to it as if it might whisper back. Aurelia, still stewing in silent rage, has eaten half a tray of honeyed dormice and is now laughing at nothing. That's either a breakthrough or a warning. You mentally shift 2 servers closer to her couch. You pass by the gladiator trivia corner, where an argument has broken out over whether Decimus the Bone Splitter ever fought blindfolded. The loser has to drink from the punishment amphora, which tastes like vinegar and regret. In the garden alcove, the musicians are playing a slow, seductive tune. 2 guests are dancing barefoot on the marble, swaying in rhythm and spilling wine like a shared confession. A flute girl giggles. A dancer spins. Someone is trying to balance a pomegranate on their forehead. No one knows what time it is anymore. That was the goal. Because when you planned this, when you assigned cushions and perfumes and carefully placed the poet next to the one person who would nod at his terrible metaphors, this is what you were building toward. Not chaos, not madness, but this deliberate unraveling, where masks fall off, ambitions soften, and power bends into pleasure. And in this moment, it's working. You catch the eye of a server boy standing near the doorway. He nods once, everything still flowing. Wine, food, gossip, desire. You take a breath. It's warm, perfumed, and tinged with roasted almond. And for a fleeting second, you allow yourself a smile. You have not just survived this night. You've orchestrated a myth. It's past midnight now, that sacred hour in Rome when reputation and restraint finally surrender. The wine is still pouring, the perfume is thick in the air, and most guests have abandoned the concept of posture. Togas are loosened, sandals kicked off, conversations now consist mostly of slurred declarations, and laughter that comes too fast and too loud. The feast has officially entered its mythological phase. Senator Piso is now on his 3rd persona of the evening. He began as himself, morphed into Bacchus, and is currently insisting he's Jupiter, god of thunder and marital forgiveness. Across from him, the poet Bacchus has wrapped a golden curtain around himself and is reciting verses as Apollo, occasionally pointing his fig-smeared fingers at people and demanding they witness the sun. No one understands what that means, but everyone claps. The courtesans are holding court on the central couch, laughing into goblets, whispering in ears, and reenacting scenes from tragic love poems, with frequent costume changes using other people's garments. Someone is singing to a melon. Someone else has used olive oil to slick their arms and is wrestling with a harpist. No one stops them. In fact, the governor starts taking bets. The room has become a living tapestry of Roman delusion. Everyone is someone else. Every statement is exaggerated. Every movement exaggerated further. In the garden alcove, a woman climbs onto a fountain and begins declaring herself the goddess of fertility, scattering flower petals and screaming at the moon. She nearly slips, but the fan-bearer catches her just in time. and is rewarded with a kiss and a promotion to divine foot servant. Meanwhile, a merchant is arguing with a dancer about whether or not the stars are actually just Apollos, coins scattered across the sky. You take none of this personally. In fact, you planned for it. This is the peak of the Roman evening. Not the start, not the food, not even the orgy, technically. No, this is the ritual madness. The moment where every person in the room feels like a god, or an idea, or a very poetic bowl of plums. You stand near the doorway, arms folded, watching it unfold like a stage play. You make a mental note: 2 guests crying, manageable. 1 man sleeping inside an amphora, leave him. Dagger from earlier, missing, concerning. Still nothing's on fire yet. No one has dueled, no one's declared rebellion. It's going well. A drunk senator stumbles past you and says, "You know, this might be the best night of my afterlife." You don't correct him. You just nod. Because tonight, for a few brief hours, you built Olympus. The first rays of Roman dawn creep over the rooftops like soft judgment. The oil lamps have long burned out. The perfume is stale. And the silence is finally here. Not the elegant silence of marble columns or gentle fountains. No. This is the silence of overindulgence, emptied amphorae, and the collective amnesia of power-drunk nobility. You step into the triclinium, and the sight is almost beautiful. If you're the kind of person who finds poetry in disaster. One poet is asleep with his face in a fig tart. A governor's sandal is dangling from a chandelier. The Colosseum-shaped cake has collapsed, leaving tiny birds wandering around like confused soldiers after a lost war. A courtesan is curled up under a couch, whispering verses in her sleep. Something about love and vinegar. There are stains on every surface. Wine, oil, makeup, and something you refuse to identify. The centerpiece urn has been repurposed as a pillow. Someone is snoring in a fruit bowl. You walk slowly, inspecting the aftermath. This isn't just a cleanup, it's forensics. Pillows, tossed, kissed, torn. Cushions, one exploded. That one's going in the fire. Silverware, stolen. Of course. One harp, broken. Of course. One flute girl, still here, playing softly to herself. Not sad. Just processing. The staff begins to arrive, quiet and barefoot, eyes wide and movements slow. No one speaks above a whisper. The only loud thing left is the smell, that haunting combination of roasted meat, regret, and cinnamon. You assign tasks with nods. Someone begins collecting goblets. Someone else gathers sandals. 26 mismatched pairs by noon. A server finds the missing dagger, stabbed through a roasted pear. No one is injured. You consider this a win. You spot Aurelia, still seated, upright, eyes closed, lips parted as if she's about to deliver a scathing monologue. But sleep claimed her mid-insult. A silent attendant covers her with a cloak. You don't wake her. Not yet. As the light grows stronger, so does the mortality of it all. Last night they were gods. Today they are hung over mortals with wine-stained robes and questions they'll pretend they don't want answers to. You begin your final inspection. The statues are intact. The marble is scratched, but not broken. The koi pond, miraculously, still has koi. You stand in the center of it all, arms folded, listening to the slow rhythm of reset. This is where the real craft shows. Not in the glitter, not in the spectacle, but in the quiet aftermath. You bow your head for a moment. Not in prayer, but in profound exhausted relief, because you did it. The orgy happened. The city's elite were fed, flattered, perfumed, and paraded through illusion. They fell into fantasy, and now they're falling asleep in random corners believing they lived through something divine. And you? You're already thinking about next week's guest list. By late morning, the house is no longer humming. It's hushed, like a temple after a riot. The last of the guests have slipped out quietly, eyes shielded from the sun, cloaks pulled over their heads like monks of decadence. They say little. They remember less. That's the point. Some thank you on the way out. Mumbled, bleary-eyed, mostly out of obligation. Wonderful event. Everything smelled so expensive. I think I met a minor deity in the garden. You nod politely, offering small smiles, as if you weren't the one who made sure they didn't wake up next to the wrong senator's wife or face down in a half-eaten roasted lark. The house staff continues its silent ballet. Feathers swept into, piles goblets soaked and polished, wax from candles peeled from mosaic grout. The last two birds from the peacock centerpiece gently coaxed out of a curtain, and still you walk. One hand behind your back, the other trailing lightly across the edge of a now sticky marble pillar. The whole house is a diary written in mess. You pass a chair with a broken leg, snapped in what can only be described as a passionate disagreement. You leave it as is. It tells a story, a fruit stain on a statue's nose. That was probably Senator Piso. He tried to prove Jupiter's immortality with a grape toss, missed, laughed, forgot. A legacy now immortalized in sugar. Someone left behind. A gold earring. Someone else. Half a poem on a wine-soaked napkin. To the goddess who spilled the pomegranate. You have ruined me, and I am grateful. You pocket it. You'll save it. Maybe frame it, because this, all of this, is your masterpiece. Not the orgy, not the food, not even the illusion, but the fact that tomorrow they'll remember it just enough to talk about it, and not enough to regret it, and in a city where power is constantly shifting, where names rise and fall with every new decree, you remain steady. They may not know it, but you orchestrated their night, their memories, and in a way, their stories. You are Marcellus Tate, planner of the impossible, curator of chaos, and protector of illusion. You walk to the balcony and breathe in the clean morning air. Behind you, the house sighs into stillness. In front of you, the city stirs, preparing for its next day of ambition and absurdity. And you allow yourself a stretch, a long one, because next week's event has 2 senators, 3 acrobats, and a retired gladiator on the list. And you'll need your rest. With wine poured and guests reclining, it's time to activate your greatest secret weapon, the courtesans. Not just pretty faces, not just trained dancers or charming conversationalists. No, these women are tacticians in silk, capable of diffusing tension, redirecting rage, or whispering just the right story in just the right ear to avoid a duel. You've assigned them like royal pieces on a chessboard. Cassia, sultry, sharp-tongued, skilled in keeping drunk senators entertained without promises. She's placed near the military governor. His wife isn't present. His temper is. Cassia will handle it. Tertia, soft-voiced and politically aware. You put her within arm's reach of a philosopher and a tax collector who haven't spoken in 3 years. By midnight, they'll be toasting each other like schoolboys. 2 more are assigned to opposite ends of the garden. They're not there to be seen. They're there to be heard. Gossip, spun like perfume in the air, travels faster than couriers. You've planted them carefully to stir just enough scandal to keep egos busy and rivalries sleepy. One guest, clearly uninvited, is trying to wedge himself onto a cushion near a high-ranking widow. You send Amara, tall and unreadable, to sit beside him and speak slowly in Greek until he gets confused and wanders off. The courtesans understand the rules. Distract, don't inflame, flatter. Never confirm, tilt the power. Never flip the board by. The end of the night, half the men will think they were flirted with. A third will have no memory of it, and 1 or 2 will write poetry they'll regret in the morning, but they'll all leave happy. And you'll leave undamaged, because if food is fuel and wine is mood, then courtesans are diplomacy in motion. If the dining hall is divine chaos, the kitchen is full-on war. You storm through the archway into a cloud of steam, shouting and scorched herbs. The heat hits you like an insult. Cook Fabius is screaming again, always a promising sign. No, you boil the dormice after you stuff them, not before. Are we animals? A junior cook ducks as a ladle flies past his head, barely missing a tray of fig compote. Smoke rises from one oven. A platter of roasted duck has vanished. No one knows where it went. No one is asking. In the center of the storm stands the showpiece, a roasted pig stuffed with smaller birds, each stuffed with smaller, more delicate birds. A carnivorous matryoshka of edible drama. The pastry chefs, meanwhile, are in shambles. One is weeping over a cracked honey sculpture. Another is trying to salvage a cake shaped like the goddess Juno, whose face now looks slightly melted, or very tired. And then there's the garum. That cursed fermented fish sauce is spilled again, this time onto a tray of candied nuts. You curse under your breath and order the entire tray removed. If anyone gets anchovy almonds again, I'm relocating the kitchen staff to Britannia. The wine station is even worse. One amphora is cracked. 2 cupbearers are drinking on the job. A third is asleep in a crate. You clap loudly, the room stills, and you speak with the voice of a man who has seen worse. The guests are drunk. The musicians are late. A senator just tried to dance with the centerpiece. This is not the moment to fail. Fabius salutes you with a roasting skewer. The pastry chef wipes his eyes. Someone finally finds the missing duck. It had rolled under a table. Disaster. Contained. Barely. Long before guests arrive, long after the bread is baked and the figs are carved into seductive shapes, there's one final invisible detail that makes or breaks the mood. Scent. Rome doesn't do subtle, and neither does scent. You're not just masking bad smells, you're weaponizing aroma. You head to the fragrance room where alabaster jars line the shelves like trophies. Every scent here tells a story. Every combination changes the atmosphere. You summon your scent master, an elderly woman with no patience for questions and a nose that could identify regions of Nubia from a single sniff. She bows. You nod. Let the orchestration begin. Atrium, lemon rind, cedar, and crushed laurel leaves. Bright, welcoming, sharp, like a handshake dipped in power. Triclinium, myrrh, clove, musk, and rose oil. Heavy, sensual, designed to fog the lines between diplomacy and flirting. Garden, spikenard, and orange blossom, subtle with a hint of mystery. Ideal for secret whispers and late-night regrets. Latrines, yes, even here, sandalwood and mint, to maintain the illusion that Romans are above bodily functions. You test one blend, too strong. The last thing you need is a senator coughing through a love poem because he's been ambushed by saffron fumes. Adjust, dilute, try again, perfect. Then you coat the courtesans, lightly, with a custom blend. Vanilla from Carthage, a drop of sacred fig oil, and a trace of something you won't name. They'll walk through the party like living memories. Guests will dream of them for weeks without knowing why. You post scent bearers at the door. Their only job is to carry small sensors and make sure the air never stops feeling expensive. It's not about smell, it's about sensation. The sun dips low, casting long golden shadows across the mosaic floor. This is it, the final hour before arrival. The moment where Rome's elite is still bathing, powdering, and whispering rehearsed insults in front of polished bronze mirrors. You, however, are on your last inspection lap. You begin at the front gate, where the oil lamps flicker to life, throwing warm halos across the marble. 2 scent bearers take their positions, wafting citrus smoke with every slow fan stroke. The air already whispers, you are richer just for entering. Inside, the pillars are wiped clean, the tapestries fluffed, the flower petals arranged, like the aftermath of a divine accident. Nothing feels placed, but everything is planned. You pass by the triclinium. Couches firm and soft in all the right places, goblets spaced precisely, platters already kissed with early appetizers. Almonds, olives, honey-dipped apricots. You run your finger along the rim of a bronze jug. No dust. Good. A slave trips slightly while lighting a candelabra. You don't speak. You just look at him. He straightens instantly, flame steady. In the garden, the musicians are warming up. Nothing fancy yet. Just low, soothing chords. You listen. Not for perfection. For tone. It's not about music tonight. It's about mood. One of the dancers stretches under a fig tree. Another runs over her choreography silently. You nod at both. They nod back, aware this is more than a performance. It's a battle. You stop near the center couch, where Senator Piso will be seated, unless someone dies first. The cushion is aligned. The wine urn beside it is chilled. The incense burner tucked beneath will release sandalwood every 12 seconds. You check your notes, adjust a pillow half an inch, you can breathe, and that's when it happens. A servant rushes in, pale, breathless, wide-eyed. He's here, the guest of honor, early, and he brought 3 wives. You exhale, slowly. You nod. Of course he did. You step into position. It's time. You rush to the entrance hall just as the doors part and he steps in. Gaius Virilius Maro, senator, patron, lover of drama, hater of punctuality. And now, surprisingly early, his presence is enough to turn heads, but it's the 3 women behind him that nearly stop your heart. 3 wives. None of them match the one listed on the scroll, each dressed like they own the empire, each evaluating your decor like they're shopping for a new villa. The first one squints at the flowers and whispers, "These petals are wrong." The second looks at a marble column and says, "I hate spiral designs." The third, she doesn't speak. She just lifts one eyebrow and points at the cushion she expects to sit on. The central cushion. You smile like your sanity doesn't hang by a thread. "Welcome, Senator." "What a radiant surprise." Gaius Virilius beams, completely unaware of the ripple effect his arrival has caused in your entire strategy. You guide him into the atrium, snapping your fingers twice behind your back, a signal for immediate, wine-silent reassignment of courtesan buffers, one scroll runner to quietly inform the kitchen that the portions must now feed 3 extra gods. He walks with the swagger of a man who's about to get a poem written about him. His wives trail behind, like silk-draped storms waiting to release thunder. A couch is cleared. Not the couch. You're not that foolish. But a side couch, closest to the musicians, where the sound can keep them too distracted to ask why they weren't seated center stage. You order more pillows, double the perfume, and assign your most decorative fruit tray to their table. Disaster? Contained, but barely. You update your seating diagram on the wax tablet. Again, you scribble, Gaius +3, volatile. Distract with compliments. Do not mention previous wife. You move back toward the main hall just in time to see the musicians suddenly pause. There's a whisper at the door, and you know exactly what it means. He's not the only early bird tonight. And the one who just arrived, Lucius Piso. He doesn't walk in, he arrives. Lucius Piso, 3-time consul, once almost exiled, current patron of half the room, and Rome's undisputed champion of entering too loudly. The doors open and he steps, through like a storm cloaked in velvet. His toga flows dramatically, even though there's no breeze. You swear he pays someone to shake the curtain at just the right moment. A hush falls across the room, not because people are impressed, but because they're bracing for impact. He raises one hand as if to summon applause. No one claps, of course, but that doesn't stop him from smiling like they did. Ah, what a setting, what a scent. Have I walked into Olympus itself? You're already beside him with a goblet of Fernian wine and a well-rehearsed grin. "Welcome, Lord Piso. We feared the gods might keep you for themselves tonight." He chuckles, loudly, too loudly. Then he looks around, squints, and spots the central couch, occupied by Gaius Virilius Maro's 3rd wife, draped across it like she invented silk. His smile twitches. Here it comes. Curious placement. He mutters. You move quickly, offering him the next best seat. Slightly elevated, closer to the music, angled to be visible to everyone. You whisper, "We placed you where the acoustics flatter your voice." That stops him. His ego, momentarily massaged, leans into the lie. He adjusts his cloak and settles with a sigh, accepting the second-best seat as if it were part of a larger, mysterious strategy. Crisis dodged, for now. Around him, guests murmur, some admiring, some avoiding eye contact. The dancers take their cue and begin a slow, swaying introduction to reset the mood. But you know Piso isn't done. He's just waiting for someone to insult him, or worse, ignore him. And just as you're thinking it, the poet Junius Blaccus enters, arms full of scrolls, wearing a laurel crown he definitely didn't earn, and walks right past Piso without bowing. You feel the tension tighten like a drum skin. Piso glares, the poet keeps walking, and you start praying to every household god you've ever heard of, because the next 3 hours will require every ounce of cunning you've got left. The feast is now fully underway, and so is the real entertainment. The politics, the passive aggression, and the lethal whispers behind every toast. You circle the room slowly, checking wine levels, cushion alignments, and facial expressions. You've learned to read eyebrows like battle signals. Senator Piso, predictably, is already on his 3rd goblet of Fernian wine and his 2nd monologue about the decline of Roman virtue. In my day, men drank to honor the gods, not to flirt with flute girls. He says this while actively flirting with a flute girl. You keep walking. Over near the fig tray, Aurelia, Piso's uninvited wife, is holding court. She's surrounded by wives, widows, and women who definitely weren't on the guest list. She's sipping wine like it's truth serum, and she's in a mood. I suppose some women are content being 3rd wives. Others prefer respect. Everyone gasps. Gaius's 3rd wife hears it, because of course she does. She doesn't reply. She just smiles, stands up, and pours her own wine into Aurelia's sandal. Someone chokes on a grape. You casually signal. 2 attendants to move the dessert table between them. Elsewhere, the poet Blaccus is now performing a dramatic reading of his latest work titled Ode to a Woman Who Smells Like Regret and Saffron. You suspect it's about Aurelia. You're not certain. You don't want to be. And then you see him, a minor noble, someone's cousin, no title, no importance, sitting in the back, slowly sharpening a dagger against a dinner knife. You walk over slowly. Everything to your liking, sir? He looks up, smiles too wide. Delightful evening. I just don't like poetry. You nod. You casually assign 2 dancers to begin performing near him. Distract, entertain, disarm. You've done this before. Back in the center, Piso is now debating a priest about which god invented olives. No one knows why. No one dares interrupt. A cupbearer spills wine on Lucullus's robe. Lucullus freezes, then looks at the stain like it insulted his ancestors. He mutters something about barbarian service and storms out, only to return 3 minutes later after remembering he hasn't eaten the honey-roasted pears. You take a deep breath. This is the mid-feast madness. Everyone's had just enough. Wine to say the things they shouldn't, but not enough to forget them yet. The musicians play louder to cover the rising tension. And you? You start prepping for the entertainment shift. Because if all goes according to plan, the show's about to begin, and if it doesn't, you'll need another dagger distraction. You give the signal, a subtle flick of your wrist, and the entertainers move like silk through the air. This is the transition point, from wine-drenched conversation to orchestrated distraction. From barely veiled insults to artful, oiled movement. From scandal to spectacle. The flute girls glide into formation, their instruments poised like weapons of harmony. The twin dancers, identical in every way except for a single gold anklet, step forward and begin their carefully practiced choreography. It's slow at first, a pulse, a sway, a reminder that this is still Rome, where power is shown not through violence, but through who you can afford to entertain you. Guests quiet, even Piso leans back, raising an eyebrow. Aurelia sips her wine and says nothing. But you can tell she's watching every move, searching for flaws. The poet attempts to start another reading, but you wave in a harpist just in time, drowning him out with shimmering notes. The guests chuckle at the timing. The poet sulks and retreats to a corner filled with olives and passive resentment. Now the mime twins take the floor. Yes, mimes. You were warned not to hire them again. Last time they mimed a political execution, and half the guests thought it was a threat. But tonight? Tonight they're portraying the founding of Rome, with figs, a stuffed wolf, and just enough acrobatic flips to keep everyone confused and charmed at once. Laughter begins to ripple across the room. You watch the faces. Gaius is entertained. Piso is smug again. The dagger guy is clapping. Someone has taken off a sandal and is now fanning themselves with it like a noble fan. It's working. You've shifted the mood. This is where you win. Not with words, but with rhythm, visuals, pacing. You're not just a planner. You're a director of distraction, a master of momentum. And for the first time all evening, you feel the party lean into joy. The music swells, the dancers twirl, the amphorae are being refilled. And in the middle of all this, one guest stands up and declares, "I love everyone here, even Piso." Someone gasps. Even Piso looks touched. Briefly, you exhale. Let the orgy begin. If the earlier performances were the overture, this is the crescendo. The harpist plays faster. The dancers move like falling silk. The flute girls are now spinning between courses, bending notes into something that sounds like flirting with music. And the mime twins? They've escalated. They're now reenacting a mythological love triangle using a pillow, a jug of wine, and one of the peacocks. Just the feathers, thankfully. The crowd is roaring. Gaius claps like a child seeing fire for the first time. His wives are either enchanted or drunk. You're not sure which, but either works. The gladiator reenactors arrive next, oiled, muscled, wearing nothing but gold belts and misplaced confidence. They march in, clash wooden swords in slow motion, and one dramatically fakes a death in front of Aurelia. She throws a grape at his head. It lands in his mouth. Applause erupts. Two of the courtesans begin a slow duet, a seductive dance inspired by Venus and Mars, complete with strategically placed scarves, and a lyre player blushing furiously in the background. Someone near the back yells, "This is better than the actual Temple of Venus." He's not wrong. Even Piso, now leaning back with his third goblet and a fig between his fingers, mutters, "Finally, someone throws a proper party." You allow yourself the tiniest smile. A servant passes you with a tray of candied almonds. You nod approvingly, not at the almonds, but at the fact that no one is arguing anymore. No poetry readings, no dagger polishing, just pure, intoxicating distraction. You step behind a curtain, check the scent levels, still heavy with cinnamon and musk, and glance at your checklist. There's one more act to go before dessert. A living sculpture performance featuring two dancers painted in bronze and posing as regret and ecstasy. Pretentious? Absolutely. But when regret strikes a pose that looks like she's whispering into ecstasy's ear, half the room gasps, the other half orders more wine. This is peak Rome. This is decadence weaponized. This is what they came for. And you delivered. By now, the guests aren't seated anymore. They're lounging, leaning, laughing too loud, or attempting to dance despite wearing 10 layers of silk and confidence. The courtesans are no longer on assignment. They're gliding freely, accepting grapes, compliments, and the occasional unsolicited poem. One of them is balancing a bowl of dates on her head while debating politics with a half-naked consul. The peach throwing has begun. It starts with a single overripe peach, lobbed gently at a senator who wouldn't stop quoting Cicero. It hits him square in the chest. He pauses, then laughs. Suddenly, everyone has a piece of fruit, and what began as passive-aggressive nutrition becomes a theatrical event. You don't stop it. You planned for this. A dancer spins too close to a column and knocks over a candle, but someone catches it midair with the kind of reflex that only drunk nobility and adrenaline can produce. The musicians, now emboldened, are improvising. They're playing something between a wedding march and a tavern brawl soundtrack, and somehow it works. One guest has turned a toga into a turban. Another has begun crawling beneath the banquet tables, claiming to be in search of Neptune's wine. Senator Piso is now shirtless and claiming he was once blessed by Apollo. "Right here," he says, pointing to his shoulder, "where a very large fig stain now resides." Someone calls him a national treasure. Someone else calls him an ancient embarrassment. Both toast each other. A courtesan begins reciting lines from an erotic play no one admits to having seen, but everyone suddenly knows by heart. Applause follows. A man throws coins at her. Feet. She throws one back at his face. It is, by all definitions, perfectly controlled chaos. And you? You're still in the shadows, watching, smiling, because you didn't plan for peace. You planned for pleasure to spiral, for egos to slip, laughter to erupt, scandal to stretch its legs, and for a group of Rome's most dangerous people to forget, for one night, how much they hate each other. And so far, it's working. At this stage of the night, the philosophers emerge, not from libraries or temples, but from wine. Everyone is a thinker now. A former tax official begins explaining the meaning of love using a cluster of grapes and a misquoted Plato passage. Someone near the fountain insists time is a wheel. Someone else counters that time is a sponge. Neither knows what they're saying, but both are nodding like prophets. A courtesan raises her goblet and offers a toast to the gods of pleasure and the fools who confuse it with marriage. The room erupts in laughter, except for one man, who suddenly begins weeping. He's comforted with honey and flattery. He'll recover. Then come the games. The gladiator reenactors have taken over one end of the hall, organizing a drinking competition where each question answered incorrectly means you chug from a randomly assigned amphora. One is filled with wine, one with vinegar, one with something green that no one remembers assigning. The questions are improvised and ridiculous. Name all the emperors who cried in public. How many figs can a senator juggle before the gods intervene? Who's more powerful, Jupiter or Aurelia? That last one causes silence, no one answers. Aurelia smirks. A group of dancers begins a conga line around the triclinium. No one knows what a conga line is. It hasn't been invented yet. But they're doing it, and it's glorious. Piso and the poet Blackus are arm wrestling over a tray of candied almonds. You consider stepping in, but decide it's good for morale. Meanwhile, someone has decided to baptize a melon in the fountain, claiming it's the rebirth of Saturn. You make a note, remove melon in the morning. One man, clearly drunk beyond comprehension, stands and declares, "This is the greatest moment of my life. I don't know what day it is and I don't care." Everyone cheers. The wine flows faster. The logic flows looser. Someone begins a chant that turns into a limerick and then into a pillow fight. You take a slow, deep breath. You have reached the point in the night when all power, status, shame, and politics have dissolved into a puddle of joy, ego, and fermented philosophy. And it is somehow exactly what you meant it to be. At this hour, there are no names anymore. Only gods, only legends, only bodies reclining, gliding, laughing, and reaching for each other like marble statues come to life. The wine has melted rank and reason. The guests are now painting their faces with crushed berries. Someone's tracing the constellation Orion on a dancer's back using olive oil and fig seeds. No one is themselves. They are Venus, Apollo, Mars, and madness. One of Gaius's wives is sitting atop a fruit tray, declaring war on Saturn. Another is feeding grapes to a man who thinks he's a horse, and neighs whenever touched. A courtesan is being serenaded by a senator who insists he's writing poetry with his chest hair. No one stops him. It's part of the myth now. Two guests have decided to recreate the fall of Troy using bread rolls and a curtain. Someone is crawling under tables with a jug, whispering, "Where is Dionysus? I was promised Dionysus." The dancers, once performers, are now participants, not choreographed, but possessed, weaving between couches like divine apparitions. The music is no longer music. It's rhythm, echo, vibration, a soundtrack to unrehearsed immortality. You see a pair of guests using pillows as helmets, fighting mock battles over who gets the last pair. A third climbs a pillar and shouts, "I am Mercury, I deliver messages of love and poor decisions." Everyone cheers. The floor is covered in silk, feathers, petals, and at least 3 unidentifiable liquids. A courtesan is now lying in the koi pond, fully clothed, whispering riddles to the fish. And you? You stand behind a curtain, arms folded, heart steady. This is not chaos. This is ritual. A Roman orgy isn't about sex, it's about power breaking. It's about people forgetting they were powerful, long enough to be something else. Tonight, they are naked, not just in flesh, but in ego, soft, laughing, human. And you are the architect of that rarest Roman luxury, surrender. The first light of dawn slips through the silk-draped windows like a gossiping servant, slow, quiet, and brutally honest. The house is wrecked, but in a beautiful way. Like a city after a victory parade, like a love letter crumpled and kissed too many times. You walk into the triclinium barefoot, silent. The floor is littered with grapes fig stem sandals that don't match one fully roasted dormouse, untouched, resting on someone's scroll. The goddesses of the night are now women snoring under couches. The Jupiters and Apollos have reverted into wrinkled men clutching their backs and muttering, "What did I say?" A senator is curled up with 2 courtesans, or maybe 3. It's hard to tell under all the pillows. One is trying to discreetly remove herself without waking him. She doesn't succeed. He mumbles something about war taxes and rolls over. You pass Gaius, who is still in full toga, sitting upright, fast asleep, clutching a pear like a scepter. One of his wives is nowhere to be found. Another is drawing something obscene on a marble bust with charcoal. You say nothing, it's actually quite good. Aurelia, snoring peacefully, draped in someone else's robe, her hair perfectly intact. Terrifying. You check the koi pond. There is, miraculously, still koi, and someone still floating in it, humming softly. You assign 2 servants to gently drag them out before someone asks questions. In the garden, someone has arranged olive pits into a love poem. It's misspelled. It's also kind of moving. You find a scroll crumpled under a wine jug with 3 words scribbled on it. Tonight we lived. You keep that one. The staff begins the sacred morning ritual. Restoration. Candles are snuffed, bowls removed, feathers swept, shame carefully folded into napkins. The harpist from earlier is asleep inside his own instrument case. You let him be. He earned it. And you? You move through it all like a priest after a festival, nodding, observing, noting what worked, what didn't, and who vomited in the atrium fountain. Answer, Piso, again. This is the morning no one will mention later, but everyone will. Remember, because the orgy was not just successful, it was legendary. The house is quiet now. Not the tense silence before the feast, but the deep, satisfied silence that comes after every appetite has been fed, every ego stroked, every mask removed, and every fantasy briefly believed. You step onto the terrace just as the sun rises fully, casting Rome in gold and haze. Behind, you, a battlefield of silk, laughter, spilled wine, half-remembered kisses, and stories that will be retold with edits for years to come. Ahead of you, the distant hum of carts, merchants, and politics resuming their daily game, unaware of the gods that walked among them last night. A servant approaches quietly, offers you water. You wave it away and take a sip of the last cup of wine, still half full from someone's forgotten toast. You breathe in the leftover perfume, the scorched oil, the citrus under the cushions, the scent of survival, of success. You walk through the hall one last time, alone. You touch the mosaic where the twins mimed Mars and Venus. You glance at the couch where Piso proclaimed himself immortal. You pick up a scroll someone scrawled mid-orgy. It simply reads, "I touched eternity and spilled wine on it." You keep that too. You did what no priest, no emperor, no artist could do. You brought the divine down to earth, even for a few hours. You made Rome forget itself. And that, in this city of marble and madness, is the highest kind of magic. By tonight, the floor will be polished, the cushions refluffed, the scandal quietly denied. But somewhere, in whispers, in dreams, in scrolls passed under the table, your work will echo. Did you hear about that party? Who planned it? Some genius no one remembers. But everyone owes. You don't need a statue. You don't need a triumph. You just need one moment. This one, where you know you created joy in a city built on conquest. You turn, you Walk into the morning, Marcellus Tate, planner of orgies, sculptor of illusions, and silent keeper of Rome's most sacred secret. That even gods need someone to arrange the cushions.